Welcome in, newest edition of Caught Stealing here at Fantasy Alarm. I'm your host, Colby Conway at Colby R. Conway over on X. And with me here, as always, Matt Selz at the Selz Man, covering you here at fantasyalarm.com. Matt, we're going to jump right into it here. And I got to ask, I feel like we could say this every single year, but it feels like it's hitting a little bit more close to home this year. But is this the worst year for injuries and fantasy baseball that we've had in quite some time? Again, I'm sure next year, a year from now, we'll say the same thing. But man, it's brutal out there right now.
So I want to say no because I feel like last year we were pacing this way too with a bunch of big names, but like the injury drops that happened today, we're recording this Wednesday night. Um, we'll get to these injuries here in a minute. All of them are big names. Like there's not a single dude. I mean, maybe one of them that's not playing a big role for your fantasy team. So right now, instead of the dog days of August, we're talking about the dog days of April right now. Like the streamers and waivers we have for you this week are like what we would normally be going with like August because people just got traded or dudes are already out for the year and like we're 4 months into a 6 month season and it's gross, but nope, we're like 3 weeks in. Like this is it's hard out there, man. It's I made it 2 whole weeks before I got a guy injured on any one of my fantasy teams, and I feel like that's an accomplishment.
That's a massive win. I wrote about it in the fantasy baseball injury report over at Fantasy Alarm. I said if you somehow made it without an injury to one of your starting pitchers, you should probably go play the lottery because that's about how lucky you've been with
Yeah,
all the injuries that we've
the,
had.
the two guys were not pitchers.
Oh, then you should
John
go get a
Birdie and
Powerball
Jake
ticket.
Berger. John Birdie and Jake Berger both got injured. Sweet, awesome balloons. Again, don't know how that happened.
Love those reactions. Must be through Zoom because Zoom does that too. I love it.
I don't know. It's fantastic. It's well timed though with the congratulatory balloons. Yeah, I don't knocking on wood yet have a pitcher injury. I drafted a few guys that are injured, but I haven't had one go down yet that I've been counting on.
Well, make sure you check out the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball Injury Report. I'll have that updated probably later in the
I
day,
mean,
to
you
be
should have a
honest.
daily, like it should just be a daily thing.
I know.
Oh wait, I shouldn't give Howard any ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it could be without everything that happened. So just in the last couple of days, we don't need to go too far in depth of these, but hold on, let me get a big breath because this is gonna take a little bit here. But in Atlanta, Ozzie Albies, toe, injured list. Seiya Suzuki, oblique, injury list. Darvish, neck, injury list. Christian Yelich, stop me if you heard this one before. Back issues, injured list. And Mr. Irrelevant in Colorado, Chris Bryant,
Yeah,
back strain, injured list. And as right before we were starting to record this, checking over at the player news that we have over at Fantasy Alarm, Robert Stevenson, rehabbing back from a shoulder injury, pulled after one hitter and is now out for the year due
yep,
to the shoulder issue. So
yeah. There was
that's the
also
latest update.
Garrett Whitlock left early with an oblique from his start on Tuesday for Boston. Um, who? Oh, Acuna had a knee thing.
Oh, well, he hit his first home run, so I'm trending right for that prediction
See,
for the week.
he should have just stuck with the steals because apparently hitting the home runs tweaks the knee more than the steals.
Yeah,
I say in jest, but
yeah.
yeah, he did not look. I saw a clip of him in the seventh inning. He was trying to work out his knee while standing out there in the outfield and didn't look terribly comfy. I don't know any other details. Not on the IO yet. There's no other deal, but we'll see. I did see somebody else get sent for. Oh, Rafael Devers might be getting sent for an MRI
Yeah,
because
a little.
knee pain popped up after a double play. I think.
He was dealing with a shoulder issue. His shoulder was barking a little bit. Now we got this.
Yeah, now we got a knee. Tyler O'Neill concussed himself by running into a teammate.
I think it was Devers.
Was it Devers?
I think it was.
Yeah. Yeah, Tyler O'Neill
Yeah.
left with a head thing. He was bleeding, and then I think he's on the concussion deal.
Which
And
that's insane because that guy is built
he's
like a
huge.
brick you know what house. And for him to take typically when I think of Tyler O'Neill and like a collision, I'm like, man, you ought to see the other guy. Not
Yeah,
Tyler
no,
O'Neill, but
what
this
the
time you
other
see
guy?
Tyler O'Neill.
Yeah, so hopefully not a serious thing for him, but yeah, there's like everybody's banged up, man. It's not great. Ozzie Albies, from what I'm hearing, is probably closer to a month than 3 months, which is good,
Mm,
but it's still a month without a top flight second baseman. The Braves' entire lineup is going to take a hit from that one, losing a table setter. Seiya Suzuki, I'm hearing, is in like the 4 week range, is what Craig Counsell said. Though they'll know more when they, get some more imaging done and stuff. Hopefully for me, hopefully it's only a month, man, because that guy's been absolutely amazing to start the season. You Darvish, I mean, it's a neck thing. I don't think they think it's serious. I just
mm,
think he can't make another start, so they're, instead of eating a spot and having to, bullpen it, they're calling up another arm. Yelich, it's a chronic back thing, man. Like, it was a matter of time basically before he was going to wind up. He's been on the IL at least once a year for, like, I don't know, his entire time in Milwaukee.
mm,
So it does suck. He was off to a really good start to the year, and Chris Bryant, he just doesn't matter anymore. He doesn't do anything.
mm.
I'm sorry, Chris Bryant. You're a lovely guy, paid really well. You somehow swindled the Rockies into, like, maybe the worst sports contract in the history of Colorado sports. But fantasy, he doesn't matter anymore.
Yep. Fortunately, I wrote about it in the injury report over at Fantasy Alarms. Make sure you go check it out. But Jordan Romano returned, immediately gets a save. He's back in the ninth inning as if there were any concerns there. And Justin Verlander, we talked about it in the earlier episode this week, which you can go check that out as well on your preferred platform. But he will make his season debut Friday against your Washington
He
Nationals.
will. It's Mackenzie Gore against Justin Verlander, which is low key a pretty interesting pitching matchup.
It
Uh,
should be.
so we'll see. I don't know how many innings Verlander's going to go. They haven't really said if he's on a pitch count or not.
I believe he worked into the mid 70s in his last rehab start, but there's literally no reason to push him too far. So I wouldn't be surprised if
Yeah,
he hangs out like low to mid 80s. That seems like a reasonable
probably.
number.
So if he's efficient, maybe he gets through 6. If he's not efficient, maybe 4 and change, 5 plus, somewhere in there. Hopefully, for my net's sake, he's not efficient and we're crushing him and he has to leave early. Um, but we'll see.
We shall see indeed. And if you head over to fantasyalarm.com, obviously you'll see my fantasy baseball injury report, a lot of great baseball content there as well. But you'll also see from the brain of Matt Selz directly the top fantasy baseball prospects and the prospect report. Become an all pro subscriber today. So not only can you see the content like that, but you can also get access to us in our Discord. Ask us your trade questions, lineup questions, anything and everything in between, all the time, none of the time. It is up to you. But let's go down on the farm with Matt Selz. We're technically going down on the farm, but this guy's no longer there because he's up in the show. Texas calls up Jack Leiter. Early on, it was command, 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 or I should say lack thereof. And of late, it's gotten a little bit better. So Jack Leiter is obviously going to be a bigger name. He's a bigger time prospect coming up. What is the kind of the fantasy outlook for the former, I believe,
Second
second
overall.
overall pick?
Yeah. He was a second overall pick in
Yep.
2021 coming out of the baseball factory that is Vanderbilt University. Um, his stuff, look, there's been no doubt in the minor leagues that his stuff has been really good. Like, his stuff is able to dominate. Okay. He put up, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, about 100 more strikeouts than innings pitched in the minors. 55, 70, somewhere in there. He put up a lot of, like, 11.6K per nine his entire time in the minor leagues. Here's the problem. He didn't control it very well because he also walked like more than 4.5 dudes per 9 innings. His ERA the first 2 years in the minor leagues was north of 5, which, granted, can't really take all that seriously in the minors because you don't know what the defense is like. You don't know what the parks are like. You don't know what the home scorers are ruling errors and not errors and whatnot. But it's a pretty decent indication that, along with the walks, he wasn't controlling stuff. He was getting hit. He was allowing home runs more than he should have. And he spent a total of 7 weeks on the developmental list, which, if you haven't heard of this, it's basically when a team can take a guy out of the minor leagues, send him to essentially extended spring training or their development camps in Arizona or Florida, to have them specifically work on something not in game action, right? It's not like a rehab start when they're injured. They're just, you clearly need to work on something. We're going to put you on this list. You're going to stay there until you figure it out. They did that because his control was terrible, just absolutely terrible. He started to figure it out this year. They're rewarding him with a call up. Um, in terms of length of time that he's up, I'm not 100% sure yet. This may be a spot starter too because they have a gap in their rotation. Um, this may be an honest to God tryout. I find it interesting that the Rangers would be doing that this early in the season, but it does feel like they need something early in the year to help that pitching staff. So, I would put out, I kind of considered him in the article, I kind of considered him a streaming option for right now. His stuff is good enough to strike out major league hitters, but the problem is his delivery can get out of sync and then out of time. And then he starts putting pitches where you don't want to put them to professional hitters. And then they make them pay. So um, I'm hoping he figures his stuff out because Jack Leiter coming through college was unbelievable at Vanderbilt. Was just flat out unbelievable. And then since he turned pro, it's been a little bit of a rocky road.
More streamer, less rotation saver for Jack Leiter for us fantasy managers out there. Let's talk about another prospect that you mentioned here in the prospect report who also got the call. Some would say Jonathan per spelling. It's actually Jonatan. We'll have to see if you actually say the H or not. And then Clase out in Seattle. A lot of speed, a little bit of pop. Can he hit for average? What's his role going to be like? Because that's kind of like, with another outfielder going in the IL in Seattle. Can Clase stick around? And if so, kind of similar, can't really say streamer because obviously he's more of a hitter, but is he a guy that we can expect to kind of be a mainstay in our fantasy lineup? Or is it more of like hey, we'll ride the hot hand and see if his playing time kind of continues moving forward when Seattle gets a little healthier?
Yeah, I think it's the latter rather than the former. His hit tool, look, he's hitting pretty well right now, but in general, his hit tool is below average. The power is below average. He's kind of in the minor leagues. He's basically been on pace for maybe 15 home runs over 162 game season. So it's not terrible, but he's not by any means a 2020 guy. Um, Last year he did nearly get to 2080, so there was that in the minor leagues. Um, but again, in the majors, you have to assume that the power is going to drop a little bit because you're playing in bigger parks, you're playing better pitching. Um, the traits that you see in the minors tend to fall off a little bit going to the majors, right? So the hit tool is kind of questionable. The speed is there in spades, for sure. He's got at least an 80 grade speed, 80 grade trait there. I think he's put up, 94 stolen bases per 162 games in the minors. Yeah, so he is a speed demon. Not a lot of pop. So I think it depends on, look, if he's playing well when Canzone comes back, there's a chance he stays up and they just rotate him through. Because they've had some pretty good luck with like 4 outfield starters there in the past too. So if you need speed, I would take the shot on him on the waiver wire in like 12 plus team leagues. In 10-team leagues, I think you can get away with not having him right now. And then just see how long he lasts.
If you need some help in the outfield and you missed out on Clase, there's an outfielder in Los Angeles. It reads Pages, but it's not Andy Pages. Andy, was it Pajes?
Pajes.
It's so unnecessary.
Yep, it's Andy Pajes.
I love it, but it's unnecessary. But a little bit of pop there. Seems like he should get a little bit of run. So talk to me a little bit about Mr. Pajes. And let's say both are out there on the waiver wire. Let's say your offense is just, excuse me, struggling in general. Obviously, if you need speed, you're probably going to lean to Clase a little bit more. But let's say speed's fine. It's just overall in a vacuum. Which of these two would you rather have?
So I think in terms of playing time and overall traits, I'd probably lean Pajes. The Dodgers, yes, they have holes. I know they spent like $1 billion and they still have holes in their roster, not named pitchers. Their right field has not been great
Mhm.
this season. Between obviously they lost Jason Hayward before the season started, or very early into the season, I should say. Chris Taylor's not been great. Kike hasn't really done anything. Like whoever they want to put in there hasn't been all that great. So Pages coming up. He had 5 home runs in his first 15 games of AAA this year. Look, the hit tool between Clase and Pages are about the same. They're slightly below average. So there's not really a huge difference there. Pages has a plus to double plus power grade. Okay, he's capable. He's hit 30 home runs in a season in the minor leagues. He's topped 26 twice in the minor leagues. Obviously had 5 in 15 games at AAA Oklahoma City. The speed is not really there. Like we're going to see maybe 10 stolen bases a year from him. So it's kind of like if you need power, go with Pages. If you want a guy who's going to play more, go with Pages. If you absolutely need speed and you're willing to take a risk on a guy who may not play as much, go with Clase. That's kind of how I broke it down this week in the prospect report.
Do you know what the WRC plus is? And you actually may know this because of something coming up later, but do you know what the WRC plus is of the Chicago White Sox offense for the year?
I do.
Okay.
Actually. It is 66.
What if I told you the WRC plus for the Los Angeles Dodgers outfield was 64?
Yeah, it's not been great.
I wish I was lying.
I mean, because Mookie's no longer in the outfield, right?
The Dodgers outfield, per looking at Fangraphs as we're reporting this,
Teoscar probably accounts for most of that because
20
Teoscar's been pretty good.
2024 Dodgers outfield WRC plus of 64, hitting 195 with a 264 OBP and a 263 WOBA, which is only better than the Minnesota outfield and the Philadelphia outfield. That is it.
It's not been good times in LA for all of the talk about how great their offense was going to be. There are some big holes. Now, don't get me wrong, they have the prospects and the depth and the money to go make trades and go get guys if teams are willing to trade them for, like, they could literally give up their top 5 prospects for Mike Trout and still have probably the second best farm system in baseball. Like that's how deep this system is. But yeah, Pages is going to get the first crack to try to solve this outfield debacle for the Dodgers.
Dodgers outfield hitting 195, 64 WRC plus, yet they have the 7th most RBI.
Yeah.
Shout out to that offense.
By the way, got a hit on the first pitch he saw in the majors last night.
Yep.
Missed on the other ones, but his 250 batting average so far is still better than the it's raising the mean of the of the Dodgers outfield.
And then before we head into the weekend for our waiver wire pickups and weekend streamers, from your prospect report, Matt, prospect rankings, any other names fantasy managers should be taking a watch? Maybe there's guys in the article, maybe not. Any other prospects down on the farm of note for you?
There are quite a few pitchers listed in that article. I know we just talked about one of them, but there's about 6 or 7 other pitchers that I list in the article. Some of them have already come up. A couple of guys for the White Sox. I know not great, but somebody's got to pitch, and they could luck into some wins. There's some guys who may be coming for some teams that need help. Like there's a couple of Boston guys that I've listed based on the injuries that we talked about at the beginning of the pod. There's a pitcher for the Mets who's getting all sorts of hubbub right now and should be up reasonably soon. So go check that out. There's a few pretty interesting guys that have been announced as coming up, and some that may come up and you could stash ahead of time.
Yep. You didn't tip off any of those names. So if you want to know those names and get a leg up, head over to fantasyalarm.com and check out Matt's prospect rankings and the Fantasy Baseball Prospect Report. So make sure you check it out. So Matt, let's kick off. I know today, as we're listening to this, is Thursday. We're recording on a Wednesday, but let's kick off the weekend a day early. Let's look at some waiver wire pickups and weekend streamers. I will kick the ball over to you first for your waiver wire pickup.
So this is gonna sound gross. Remember how earlier in the pod I was talking about how some of our guys are like, "Hey, these are guys where you look like in August because they're doing okay, and we need some dudes." Well, we're pulling the emergency handle right now.
Mhm.
There's an outfielder in New York who is only rostered in like less than 30% of leagues on Fantrax. I think it's like 23%. Harrison Bader for the Mets. I know he got off to a god awful start, but in April he's hitting 311. He just hit a home run earlier today on Wednesday, his first of the year. He's stolen 3 bags. Not sexy, I know, but his launch angle is starting to rise, so the power should be coming. He's getting on base at a decent clip. He's not striking out a ton. Okay, he's made hard contact 40% of the time so far. Pretty decent. Sure, the Mets offense is struggling, but they've got some bats that you would presume will start to turn it around. Um, and look, last year he played 98 games, nearly went 10-20 while hitting okay, right? Not great. Um, but again, look, we're losing outfielders left, right, and sideways here. We got some other guys who may wind up on the IL sooner rather than later. Harrison Bader's out there. He's not going to kill you right now, and if he starts to cool off, drop him. Like it's not a you don't need this guy for the rest of the season thing. If he starts to cool off, go drop him. But right now he's hitting home runs, stealing bags, driving people in, and hitting 311 in the month of April.
Nothing wrong with riding the hot hand, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Even though we might be playing a little reliever roulette in Milwaukee, but I'll
Look,
go
me and
Joel.
Grande and I started the year in our FSGA draft doing that. We literally drafted 2 of these guys, and we've been just rotating them through.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, Joel Pyams is pitching the ninth inning of late, and that's what it seems like. Honestly, it seems like they flip a coin heading into the week of who's going to get the saves and who's going to be in like the
yep,
fireman role. But of late, Abner Uribe's been in the kind of the fireman role, and Joel Pyams has pitched the ninth the last couple of appearances. He got the save on, as we're recording this tonight, Wednesday the 17th. He got the save on Wednesday. And really, when you look at Pyams, it's one bad outing. That's it. You know, he'd have a 0.00000000 ERA if it weren't for that one outing where he allowed all of the earned runs that
yep.
he's allowed on the season. So take a look at Pyamps, and this could be a very well thing. Hey, maybe the coin landed heads this week, and that means him, and next week it could be tails, and that means it's Uribe. But for now, Pyamps is getting saves, and heading into the weekend, they get a little juicy 3-game set with the St. Louis Cardinals, which I expect them to win multiple of those games. Maybe a couple more save chances for Pyamps. So
Yeah. Also, if you're in a Solds league, there's literally no downside to either Pyamps or Uribe.
yep. Agreed.
Like I said, Grande and I have both of them.
Yep.
We drafted both in the last 2 rounds of the draft because for some reason they were still there.
Yep. I like it. Definitely in Solds League. Can't go wrong with either. If you need just saves, roll with Pyamps for now. He'll be a drop if he's not getting ninth inning work for a couple outings in a row, or he just loses the coin toss for that particular week. So
Right.
looks like he got it this week. But that'll be the waiver wire pickup. And then sometime this weekend, most likely Howard Bender will have his waiver wire article out. So make sure you check that over at Fantasy Alarm. But to put a bow on the midweek episode here of the Caught Stealing Fantasy Baseball Podcast, let's give you our weekend streamers if you need some starting pitching help. And I know that everyone out here does. Here are a couple starters that you can take a look at. I'll kick the ball over to you, Matt.
Yeah. So this one, look, on Fantrax, he's rostered 62% of the time, but that still means that 1 in 3 leagues, more than 1 in 3 leagues, you can still find him, right? Closer to 4 in 10. On ESPN, this dude is rostered 24% of leagues. Okay. Spencer Turnbull. I know the name might bring up bad memories in Detroit. He's not in Detroit anymore. He's in Philadelphia, backed by a pretty decent offense. And in case you haven't noticed, he's put up a 1.80 ERA in his first 3 starts. Okay. If we look at things like FIP and XFIP, he's still in the low threes. So it's not like he's doing it with smoke and mirrors. If he keeps this clip up with strikeouts, his 9.6 K per nine would be the best of his career. Do I expect him to? No. But you know who he's playing on Friday? He's pitching against the White Sox, which is why I knew what the WRC plus of the White Sox are. It's 66 on the season. They're hitting 196 as a team, the only team that's worse. Minnesota Twins at 195, but the Twins are actually better at getting on base and slugging than the White Sox. So
Mhm.
there's that. White Sox aren't hitting baseballs. They're not hitting them hard. They're not doing anything with them. So, yeah, Turnbull's good. White Sox suck. That's my analysis.
End of story. Going to another team that isn't very good. I'm going to look at Logan Allen of the Guardians. Gets a home start Saturday against the Oakland Athletics. He's owned in 12% of ESPN leagues. And when you look, simply put, Oakland has a league worst strikeout rate against left-handed pitching, third worst walk rate, measly 75 WRC plus. I know that's better than the Dodgers outfield WRC plus. I know it's better than the White Sox, but I wouldn't be too worried about Allen going up against Oakland. He had a good start against them earlier in the year where he went five innings, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, only had 3 strikeouts there. One thing that's kind of interesting with Allen that I'm going to kind of keep an eye on moving forward here, per Baseball Savant's run value, his changeup was his best pitch last year, and he's throwing that way less this year. It's actually his least used pitch of his 4, despite making a couple of tweaks to his pitch mix. So kind of keeping an eye on that. We'll see how it goes, but I do like his little strikeout upside. His cutter is still generating a good amount of whiffs. Maybe he'll start introducing that changeup here in a little bit. But look at Logan Allen over the weekend against Oakland. Take a look at Spencer Turnbull because he's good. White Sox stink. End of sentence. Joel Payamps and Harrison Bader could be out there on the waiver wire. Go to fantasyalarm.com and check out Matt's prospect report and prospect rankings, looking at Jack Leiter, Jonatan Clase, Andy Page's Pages, because that's how it's spelled, and a couple of other names to watch, especially if you go into that article. Make sure you scroll down to the bottom and look at some speculative fantasy ads if you want to get ahead of your league mates. That's where you need to be, as well as becoming an all-pro subscriber.
Can I add in that my bold prediction almost hit?
Sure, you can add it in.
Kevin Gausman didn't go 6, but he did allow less than 3 earned against the Yankees. He went 5, gave up, I think, 2, struck out a decent amount. And big news, Velo was back.
Yep, we talked about it. He's just
at 95.
He's just a slow starter. That's all it is. So don't be too worried about Kevin Gausman. And of course, become an all-pro subscriber to get in the Discord, get into the brain of the salesman, get into the brain of myself and everyone else at Fantasy Alarm. Lineup questions, trade questions, drop questions, any other questions you can think of that relate to a baseball, a diamond, or anything like that. We would be happy to help. Like and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this. Over on X, because it's not Twitter anymore, give Matt Selz a follow at the Salesman. Give me a follow at Colby or Conway. Check out Fantasy Alarm over there as well. Hope to see you in the Discord, and we will see you next week for the next scoring week of the fantasy baseball season here with the Caught Stealing Fantasy Baseball Podcast.